For our first story tonight, we send Colleen home to Western Pennsylvania. Colleen brags about her hometown of Dunbar. We hear about Connellsville all the time, where she went to high school. Tonight, she has a story of hidden history that has ties to Ohio State.
Yeah, some interesting ties. Ohio State track star Jesse Owens, the track and field stadium at OSU bears his name, and he was the pride of the nation in 1936. But he was not alone in his journey to Berlin and Olympic gold. This tree is known as the Olympic oak, and for 82 years it has stood over top of this high school track in Western Pennsylvania, brought home by a hometown athlete as a symbol of victory given out by Adolf Hitler. But it's symbolic of something else, because even though that athlete ran the race of his life and won Olympic gold, he was nonetheless overshadowed. They were known as Hitler's Olympics, the 1936 games that the soon-to-be Nazi dictator envisioned as a spectacle of white supremacy, his opportunity to advance his ideals of racial supremacy and anti-Semitism. Hitler built this 100,000-seat track and field stadium, where he would reign supreme and welcome to his booth the victorious white athletes. But Ohio State University's Jesse Owens had a vision of his own, running into the history books with a record-shattering 4 gold medal finishes in sprint and long jump events. The most successful athlete at the Berlin Games, famously snubbed by Hitler. What you might not know is Hitler turned his back on another black athlete, a young man who Jesse Owens counseled and encouraged minutes before the very first event of the Games, the 800-meter run.
Into the backstretch. Woodruff continues on the outside into second place.
He not only made an impact on the city itself, but the whole United States and around the world.
John Woodruff was the son of a one-time slave, one of 12 children from a poor family in Connellsville, Pennsylvania, whose 6'4" height gave him a 9-foot stride. And oh, how he used it. But in this most important race of his life, the other athletes boxed him in, and he couldn't break through.
And now Woodruff is trapped on the inside in 4th place.
They boxed him in, they slowed him down. When Johnny realized what had happened, he actually stopped, let everybody pass him in the race.
I won't have a chance of winning this race unless I get out of this box. The only way that I could get out of the box, I felt, was to slow down or stop.
Woodruff comes to almost a complete halt. Then again dashes up on the outside into the lead.
He slowed to a near stop and then passed the entire field.
For the first time in 24 years, a United States runner has won the 800-meter Olympic gold medal.
And Hitler's German crowd erupted.
Erster, Woodruff, USA.
They thought I did something impossible, which it did more or less.
We gave him a big parade in the city. Over 10,000 people came to welcome him home. He got a key. He got a key from the mayor of the city. There's a picture up there, him getting a key to the city.
Not only a key to the city, but all those people who welcomed him home also pledged money through the local paper to help pay for his transportation and living expenses for the scholarship athlete at the University of Pittsburgh.
I felt very proud that I was able to do that for that little town.
But life wasn't all glory and parades. Pitt's star athlete, an Olympic gold medalist, was not welcome in the dorms. A black man could not live on campus.
That was the only place that they put me up as an athlete, as a black athlete, at the YMCA.
He won Olympic gold in the face of Hitler's hatred, but he couldn't live on campus, and then the country he represented so proudly in Berlin turned its back on him. But John Woodruff went on to win in so many other ways. He earned a degree in sociology and then a master's, and when his country went to war, he joined the army to fight against Adolf Hitler and his Nazis. And because of his education, he was named a second lieutenant, breaking a new kind of barrier.
Back in the early 40s, especially 1941, there were only 4,000 African-American men in the military, and only 12 of those were officers.
Woodruff became part of a movement that was known as the Double V campaign. Black men in the military who wanted victory against Germany's hate-filled march to power and victory over a lifetime of racial hatred in the United States.
They wanted victory in the home front to end segregation in the military and also victory overseas.
After the war, John Woodruff went on to a life as an educator and maintained a lifetime friendship with Jesse Owens. And although the nation to this day reveres Jesse Owens, in Connellsville, John Woodruff welcomes visitors to the high school. There's an annual 5K race that carries his name. And there is an oak tree given to an Olympic champion as he stood proudly atop the podium that now stands tall over every new generation of runners.
My takeaway from Johnny is there's only one race, one great race in all of the world, and it's called the human race.
You know,